Welcome to Season 3 of the Get Out of Teaching podcast. I'm your host, Elizabeth Diakos. In each episode of this season, I'll be coaching a teacher around one aspect of their move out of education. You'll have the privilege of listening in on the powerful coaching conversations that move people closer to a life they love. So come along for the ride as we get out of teaching. Episode 9. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the show. And I'm very pleased to have with me today Anne, who has just completed the online Transferable Skills assessment. And now we're going to unpack that and talk about what she's gleaned from that, the information that she got from the assessment, and to see where that might take her next. So welcome to the show, and thanks for being willing to let everyone be a fly on the wall for this conversation, Anne. Thank you.
No worries.
Okay, so tell us what you discovered from the assessment. So I've sent you a link to an online assessment, and you've had a chance to complete that and sort of go through the steps that they ask you to go through. So what's your takeaway from that? What did you glean from that?
I thought it was pretty interesting. It was like, let me just. I don't know if you can still see me. Can you still see me?
Oh, I've got just your picture. That's fine.
All right. So real quick, I'll just pull up the screenshot that I have of it. But I thought it was interesting that I thought creativity would be my highest, but my highest was analytical. And that was interesting to just see kind of what was things that I scored highest on. I didn't necessarily expect. And then I was just interested to see, although creative was high, it was interesting to see when I was reading about the jobs that some of the skills, I'm like, okay, we definitely, I don't know. I'm like, I almost feel like I feel like there's got to be more to this, right? But a lot of the skills needed for the jobs that I found interesting were skills that I'm like, I could do that in my sleep. So like
right.
The 3 jobs I ended up choosing were a curator, a graphic designer, or a set and exhibit designer.
Okay. All right. So that's really interesting because I feel like we've got a lot of similarities. I started out thinking I would become a graphic designer until I did some work experience at my cousin's graphic design firm and hated it with a vengeance because it was just clicking the mouse all day, a lot of mouse clicking, and I felt like there wasn't a lot of creativity involved, as it turned out. But I'm interested because what you said about being more analytical. I wonder if that's a sort of strength set that you've had to leverage in order to work as a teacher, but it's not actually your core, like what you love. What do you get from that?
It makes sense. I mean, it's definitely a skill you need, because when you come into, I mean, everything about education is analyzing, right? And you are constantly reading faces and analyzing how kids are receiving what you're saying, or, receiving your redirects, or receiving, any kind of feedback you're giving. You're also analyzing. You're analyzing how people's behavior seems to be, impacting things. And I mean, it makes sense that, I guess it makes sense that that's pretty high up. My background is, my educational background, my undergrad is psychology. So I guess I shouldn't be that surprised, but I feel I've felt like I've so far removed from that, and that I was surprised to see it as high up as it was. And I guess in retrospect, it makes sense for a teacher to have high analytical skills.
Yeah. And does it kind of, I mean, is there an emotion around that for you, that's high for you?
I guess it just surprised me because I felt like, I guess I felt a little bit trapped in terms of like creatively at work. And I just thought that would be like, when I took the survey, that would be like the huge one, like the payout, the money one, right? And then when I saw it was like, organizational and analytical, I was like, well, that is boring. Boring math teachers scoring boring math teacher stuff. But it makes me think about those skills in a broader range too. Like, a museum curator, I wouldn't think would be very analytical, but it came up as a job. And that it sounds really exciting, so.
Okay. Yeah. So I mean, I've noticed that with other people that kind of thing happens where they'll score really high on something that just is not exciting for them at all, and you feel like it's boring. But it also shows what a broad skill set you have, because you've obviously still got that creativity side of you, but you've also been able to build up a skill set in that analytical, organizational side, which then makes you far more appealing because you're able to, I guess you've got a multifaceted skill set now where you can bring creativity, which is your kind of heart language, if you like. But then you've also got this other skill set that you've developed over time out of necessity, even though it might not be your thing. It's kind of, you've had to. And I know that even, right back from when I first started teaching, that there were skills I'd had to develop early on just to function and survive as a teacher. But they weren't the thing that was kind of lighting me up every day, but I still had to do it. Okay. So you've got these three: curator, graphic designer, and set and exhibit creator, I guess. So this is like for theatre or for maybe for museums, or what do you think the context of that one is?
I felt like it was kind of broad. So yeah, it could be. I was even thinking about it myself, and like I wonder if this could be like storyboarding or in a small way, something like that, where you're kind of like a set designer on like a movie, or it could be like an exhibit, like a museum. I'm thinking something like that, but I'm not sure.
Yeah,
I did read up about it, and it was the description was very like open-ended. It was more like,
yeah,
this is a job title that could be in a lot of different technical fields. Same story, different environment.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I'm even thinking, as you're saying that, something like, when you go to a conference and they've got all the stand set up and they've got plants in the corner and they've got a jar of lollies and they've got, I don't know, tea and coffee and all that kind of stuff. Someone has curated that environment to be a welcoming environment, or to have some kind of mood attached to it. So I can see that could also be that job. It might not be kind of glamorous, but hey, that'd be a whole thing, wouldn't it? Just setting up exhibitions and trade shows and that kind of thing. Somebody must do that. I never thought about it either, actually, as a job, but I guess someone has to do it. So when we talk about these three options that have come up from that survey, and these were the ones that you obviously picked. That there would have been other choices, but these are the ones that you thought were going to be the best fit. Out of those three, curator, graphic design, and the set and exhibit curator, what sort of gets you excited?
I think the one I found most exciting was curator, just curator in general, like, because there's that, because I still like, I'm a natural teacher. I'm always like teaching, even before I was a professional teacher. And I'm a storyteller. So I like to, it seems like it's kind of really up my alley, but I worry about, like, does that mean I have to be an expert in some particular field, or I don't know. But then at the same time, I became an expert in middle school math when I wasn't. So
and
I don't
you're
know.
an expert in education. Like it's, you are an expert. What we need to do is help you to show the value that you bring to, if you're going to work for somebody else, or if you're going to create something of your own, where then you work as a contractor to other people who are, setting up exhibits and things like that, or who are in a museum, or I don't know. There's like hundreds of contexts where that could be a job, aren't there?
Yeah, it definitely has. And it said that the job, because it gave the little details about what to expect in the field, and said that the field is growing, which I kind of believe, just because, post COVID, I'm sure there'll be a boom of, exhibits opening up again and things like that. So,
and I think too, like, I know here in Australia, everyone's scrambling to create experiences for the local community, because international travel's still, sort of hasn't really come back online properly. And our government's talking about pushing it out until like 2023 or something before we can have full-blown international travel again. So I know there are people here curating experiences for local travellers who don't need to leave the country in order to, do something cool. Like I've been to the La Brea tar pits in LA, which is very cool. And that's like this whole kind of museum, but it's on site. So you go around to the different sections of it, and they've got like, a little show with a saber-toothed tiger. It was so much fun. My daughter was really mad because she wanted to see the Hollywood sign, and we took her to see that instead. But for me, as a kind of a bit of a ancient history geek, I loved it. So I think those kinds of experiences are going to become more popular as we want to still do cool stuff, but maybe don't want to travel overseas and take those risks of the pandemic. So when you think about that, like, did you get a chance to actually do a bit of a Google search and see if there are any jobs in those fields?
I didn't research too heavily. I just kind of played around with a little bit. And I just kind of I really actually mostly researched a lot of places around me that had exhibits, and I didn't even know some things existed. But I was just kind of like looking around just to see like what, besides, an art museum, what else is there? Just because I do like the, like, remember when you were saying like the para teaching roles, in terms of they're still educational, but they're not like a traditional teacher in a classroom. I like that idea. And I was just looking into, what kind of curators do that? What kind of curators are kind of active with their, they may be a part of their exhibit, or they may be with it, or they may help it move along. So I did that. I didn't necessarily research too much, but
right. So you're talking things like running a tour of an exhibit, or explaining something, to the audience, that kind of thing.
Yeah, some kind of, exactly, something where you get to share your passion for whatever it is, and or share the history of something. And I luck out because I'm close to Boston and stuff. There's a lot more than I even realized, places around, and a lot of history and things like that. So
awesome. Okay, so what do you think the next step is then, given that you've got this broad skill set of both creativity and these organizational analytical skills? You've found 3 potential jobs, one of which is really kind of getting you excited. What do you think the next step needs to be?
I think I need to do a little bit more research on like, what does it mean to be in that position, and what do you need for that? It's sometimes hard to tell what skills are like necessary for a job, and what skills, how do I put this? Like, what skills you can have, like, this is obviously transferable skills, right? So a lot of them in the write-up, it said a lot of like how your skills would transfer over to this position.
Yeah.
But then I wonder, like, do I need to have something else? Is there, any other level of expertise, or can I walk in and learn it like I learned, middle school math curriculum? I'm not, I guess.
Yeah. So I guess it would depend a little bit on which area you went into. Like if you went into museum curatorship, there's bound to be some kind of short course for that, I would imagine. I remember doing a short course in like curating art exhibitions and writing the curatorial plaques for art exhibitions back, years ago before I even started teaching. So there's definitely little things you can do along the way. I guess what we want to find out, though, is any of that going to translate quickly into another job, which is kind of what would be the next logical step, is how much extra study do you need to take on before you can move into something new? And I guess the best way to find that out is to start asking people, start asking questions. So I'm going to give you some homework. And I know you're still teaching and busy and it's nighttime there and you've had a big day, as every teacher has. But I think it'll be really helpful to pick out, I'm going to say 20, knowing that that's possibly a high benchmark, 20 places, and see if you can find on LinkedIn or through, just a bit of basic research, who you would need to speak to and take them out for coffee. Who do I need to speak to about this role, and maybe have some questions like, how did you get into this role? If someone, a young graduate was coming in, what would they need? What if there was someone more experienced? What would they need to bring to the party, sort of thing, to take on a role in this place? And what are the highlights maybe, and what are the bits, the challenges of this job? And then maybe ask a question like what's a day in the life of a museum curator or a exhibition curator, or I'm trying to think of other options. I'm struggling here. But, people who curate spaces, they have days. Like, what's that day look like for them? Like, I've been to co-working spaces where there's someone there curating an experience for the people coming in, and they would have guest speakers and all those kinds of things, and, provide lunch and all the rest, and someone made that experience happen. So that's a curatorial role of sorts. So what's the scope of this role? And then also, if I wanted to do it, what would be a nice environment? And if you talk to 20 people, especially if you got to go and meet them at their workplace, I know this is a big task, especially when you're working full time, but you're a bright, sparkly, particularly today, covered in glitter. You've got the capacity, I think, to have those conversations and be brave enough to have them. Imagine what you could learn if you spoke to 20 people in this industry.
Yeah, that would be. I wish I talked to 20 people before I started this job.
Yeah, no comment. I'm pretty sure a lot of teachers feel the same way, that they wish they'd had a little bit more information about what it actually entailed. You almost need to do work experience before you do your course, don't you, with education? I actually did, but I was in year 10 at high school, and there was a big gap between doing that and becoming a teacher. So I think that it changed a lot over time. So what's your takeaway from our conversation now?
I would say that it would just be to research and to get the dialogue flowing about what is this job going to be like in the real world versus what it's like on paper.
Yeah.
And see if that's going to mesh with what I'm envisioning for the future.
Awesome.
Would be the big the big takeaway.
Yeah.
Because it's easy to say that's gonna be awesome, and then it could be not a good mix, and then you'd be down this rabbit hole again, so
yeah
research.
So after that call ended, Annie and I spoke for a little bit longer, and she's going to go off and try and make contact with 6 people in that industry, in that curation industry, to see if she can sit down and have a coffee with them. So actually go to their workplace, try and meet with them, ask them some questions about what their job looks like from day to day, and to see what skill set she would need to bring into a role like that, and what qualifications, if any, that she needs to pursue in order to be able to work in that field. This is still an investigative process for Annie, and, it's just the very beginning of the whole process where maybe she'll decide it's not her thing, but there's only one place to begin, and that's just putting one foot in front of the other and doing the research that's required, so that she's really sure that if she's going to change out of education and into something new, that she actually is pretty certain that that's a good decision. And I guess the only way to really find out is to try it, but in the meantime, she can make an informed, decision about it. And I guess the other thing I wanted to say is, if you would like to have a conversation like that where we unpack the results of the Transferable Skills Assessment, you can find the booking link to a Transferable Skills Assessment and the conversation that follows it. It's on my website at larksong.com.au, and just click on that link and it'll take you to the booking link for a Transferable Skills Assessment, and we can have a conversation afterwards. And that's a paid service, so it explains it when you click on the link about how to make a payment for that. And I think we'll leave it there. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for watching and listening. Take care. Bye. If this is the kind of conversation you'd like to have, here are some ways we can make that happen. You can connect with me via my website, larksong.com.au, or join the Get Out of Teaching Facebook group, or send me a message. You don't need to stay stuck in a job that makes you miserable. I offer a free 10-minute triage call to people who are ready to explore possibilities for the future. So let's have a chat. You've been listening to the Get Out of Teaching podcast. Please share it with your teacher buddies, and for show notes and other resources, visit larksong.com.au/podcast.